Welcome, welcome, good people. This is J Artist Wright, and you are tuned in to Choice Words, the podcast by Freedom to Choose Schools. I am your host, and today we have an interesting episode. We're going to talk about private schools today. But before we dive in, and before I introduce you to our guest, I want to just share some quick statistics so that you understand why we're framing this conversation this way. First off, 83% of students across the board attend traditional public schools. 15% of students attend private schools, and about 7% attend charter. And then there's all mixes in between there. But specifically for Black students, only about 9% of Black students attend private schools in our country. And 1 in 10 private schools have a Black child in them. And so there is something to be said about the marker of opportunity and what we see to be advantageous for private schools specifically. However, there's an uncommon path that happens specifically for Black families. In today's conversation, we're going to explore the choice from the lens of parents who choose private schools, Black parents who choose private schools. We have our guest, Mona Smart, Mrs. Ramona Smart. I know her as Mona. But she is a mom of a Black male student who attends an elite private school in Woodlands Hills, California. Is that correct? Calabasas, Woodland Hill. Okay, Calabasas. And today we're going to discuss a couple of things. Just her experience navigating through private schools, the trade-offs with that type of option, why she chose that type of option, just some historical context of her upbringing, just the connections and the ties that she may have had with the private school community, and ultimately how she has to, what she has to do to make sure that all the identities of her son are showing up, the culture, gender, all those things that she needs in order to make sure that he not only has a quality education, but an emotional and mental and physical support that he needs to be a young Black male in our country. So this is really a very special podcast for me because, like I said, I call her Mona. Is it okay if I call you Mona?
Please do.
Okay. All right. And we're going to try to keep a straight face because Mona and I have known each other for a very long time. She is a dear friend of mine. But the reason why, Mona, I wanted to bring you on this podcast is because we've sat and shared our experiences as parents. I remember specifically when the George Floyd incident happened, and we were just talking about like how stressful it is to think about being a parent of Black children in this country. And you specifically felt such heartstrings pulled at you because you were raising a Black male, you have a son. And it stuck with me. And that was, I think, before your son was even pursuing primary education. So I always wanted to come back to you because, you chose this option. You yourself went to a private school, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit because, again, I know you so well, but I want to do due diligence to let people know who you are as well, because you are a badass and always has been. But we need to let everybody else know about that. So let me just take a step back for a minute. So Mona is the owner and founder of Smart Insurance Agency, which she runs in Woodland Hills. And she's worked in the insurance industry for about 16 years. She has some very high profile clients coming out of Calabasas, as you could imagine. But what's really interesting about her work is that Mona understands families, and she understands the value that, families specifically want to play on the livelihood and the future of their children. She's also served on the board for the Los Angeles Urban League of Young Professionals. She's with Young Realist League of LA. And
Realtist. They get very picky about it.
Realist?
Realtist.
Oh, realtist. Oh, not realist.
Yes.
Realtist,
Nope.
like realtors.
Realtist, yes.
Okay, we got to be specific because we don't want no phone calls. Okay.
You don't want that smoke.
No, don't want it. All right, cool. And then last year, you were actually the first Black president of your son's private school. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So let's just get into all the things because, again, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for a very long time, but I want our guests to understand, like, where does this come from? Where does your choices come from? And so the first thing I have to ask you is, what was your own experience with education? How did you pursue education? What type of schooling did you go to?
As you know, I'm from Alaska, And I guess we can start there because there's my mom actually is from Utah, and she is Catholic in a very Mormon state, and she went to Catholic school. And so I went to Catholic school when I was in primary, but when we got to Alaska, it was a public school. There was only one school. It was a very small Eskimo village, so it's like being on an Indian reservation. We were one of two Black families, and um, often we were the only Black people around. Even when we lived in Utah, we were the only Black family. So when my education was, I was pushed ahead 1 year. But when they did that, because I arrived in fourth grade, when they did that, they just kind of put me in a room by myself and said, "Here are the books and good luck." Because my parents didn't want me to be in a grade with older kids. And so that is the choice. I wish they had made a different choice, but that is the choice that they made, where I was just kind of isolated and kind of set aside and said, okay, you go learn that stuff over here where we're still learning the things you already know. I did not have very much growth during that year. Um, Move on to junior high. I was a voracious reader, and I mean, I lived in a very isolated place. I we got movies probably 6 months after everybody else. We had very limited access to the outside world because it is very isolated. So I would read all the time. And I don't know if I attributed any of these aspirations to, I think I watched like Oxford Blues, and I had been reading some some book about a girl who went to boarding school, and I was just like, okay, there's something more out there. There is this boarding school thing. So let me explore that a little bit more. I read a little bit more, and I just went to my parents and I was just like, look, if you want me to attain any sort of professional um, achievement or have any sort of education, I need to leave this place and I want to go to boarding school. And I don't recall what happened in that conversation, but what stuck with me and I will always be grateful for is the very next day I saw my mom in the principal's office. I didn't know what she was doing in there, but when I got home, she had a catalog of all these boarding schools. And it makes me
Yeah,
emotional.
I know. Mama Dunbar, we love her.
I know.
Yes.
And they were like, "Okay, where do you want to go?" And we figured it out.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest gifts. And I know it was a sacrifice for her because we were very close. But they knew that I needed more and I wanted more. So they sent me to boarding school, and it was an all girls boarding school in Tacoma. And it was a culture shock. It was, I was behind, and the school rallied to bring me up to pace. And um there were 20 of us in our class. About 80% of us lived at school. So we had kids from the Seychelles Islands, from Thailand, from, oh gosh, Japan, China, um where else? All over the place, and some locals. And I was from Alaska. So, and we were 20 girls that just came from all over. We lived together. And I'm still friends with these some of these girls. And academically, I buckled down and I caught up. And I remember one of the biggest kind of revelations was that, okay, we have girls crying and devastated and upset that they got a B. And that was just like they thought their entire future was in jeopardy. There was a desire for perfection and for academic excellence. So I was then surrounded by people who had a like mindedness of doing well and setting a path for their future. Whereas, not to say that people didn't think that way where I was coming from, but it was not as prevalent. There were probably three or four of us. We were in the public schools that were in academic decathlon, and we kind of spoke together. And there were people that came from outside of the community, and their parents were like the principal and teachers. And so there was this environment where it was expected, but it was just like a small group of us. Whereas I had gone into this environment where it's completely expected, and these aspirations were prevalent, and it was a priority. And so that was kind of my background. And then also access to college. Neither one of my parents had gone to college. And so there was a very robust, and who was my advisor was the college advisor. And so I had that, and it was a college prep. So that was the goal. And so in that process, they held my hand and told me what to do. I don't know what I would have done being back in Alaska and trying to figure out that process on my own.
Mhm.
So it was a big
So
deal.
yeah, so I want to be clear. So you made the decision. You just said to yourself, "Hey, like if I'm going to get a good education, I gotta move out to Alaska." And then your mom just at that point took the pursuit to figure out, okay, what are
And
your
my
other
dad, I mean, both of them for
yeah,
sure. Because my education was such a huge priority for my father, who was coming from Trinidad and Tobago. So he always knew and had always said education, education, education. And he always touted that he worked so hard because he didn't have an education so that we would be able to have access to these things.
Yeah, which is, and like I said, this is why I wanted to speak to you, and I love talking to you because you cover so many identities. I mean, your father is Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago. Your mother is Mexican, but you were raised in Utah and Alaska. So, just the anomaly of your experiences, um, always been incredible to me. Would you get mad at me if I put up a picture of you?
Oh God. Depends on the picture.
I was thinking of the picture of you in high school with the big hair.
Girl, why would you do that?
I won't do it. I won't do it.
Thank you. And how do you have this picture?
I think you showed it to me one time. It's in the
That's
vault. It's
so
in the
wrong.
vault. I
The
don't have
before and after, rude.
right, exactly. Well, look, we all have our before and afters for real. No, I'm just totally messing with you. I just wanted to get you back to center. 'Cause I know it was super emotional to talk about, the experiences that your parents that you had just with your mother making that decision. But also, I mean, wow, like so you were what going into high school? So ninth grade, you
I was actually I was a sophomore when they
Mhm.
started looking, and I got in my junior year.
Okay, all right. And so
Yep.
you had to leave your entire family, a very large family at that,
Yep.
go to boarding school, and then you were in boarding school in Tacoma, Washington.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. All right. And then, so you get to school, and when did you realize there was something different about your experience and from your peers as far as like your identity?
Immediately, well, let's be clear. I was always used to being the only Black person, but also, again, a class of 20, there was probably one of us in each class. Um, I think by the time so my senior year, my sister came and she was a freshman. I think that at that point they'd had kind of added like 3 to her class, which felt like a lot, especially in a group of 20, but still we only had 1 and I was that one. And
Okay.
so each class just kinda had their
Oh,
little sprinkle.
sweet. You're the pioneer for your family
I
too.
know. So it was interesting to see parents' reaction to me because I think that my fellow students, I had no problem. It was the parents that kind of had comments here and there. And that was the difficulty of it because I think these people were fairly educated and open-minded. And so I think the school kind of drew that type of person into the community. And so I didn't have problems with teachers. Um, Everybody wanted me to win. And everybody and I was a natural leader, So that was allowed to kind of flourish because I just kind of was a doer. And so I was like, okay, let's do this, let's do that. And so I took on that role.
Mhm. Were there any times where you just like had it really tough? Like, I mean, you mentioned some parents had something to say. So were parents, even though the school supported you and you felt like you were supported from your peers, you had experience with parents that were just kind of like, why is this little black girl here?
It wasn't even that. It was on the other side where they said, she's not like other Black people. And they had a prejudice towards Black people, period. And then I would come in the room and they're like, oh, she's not one of them.
But she's different. She's not one of them. Yeah. Yeah.
And and they thought it was a compliment.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So
Wow. The history of that being the tokenized black kid, right? We could talk that could be its own episode, and even how we've talked about this, how we both share that experience. I think that's one of the reasons why we bonded when we met each other, because it was like, oh, someone who had the same experience as I had, but also the anger that comes with it when you get to college and when you become a young adult. We're like, wait a minute, that wasn't a compliment. Like,
yes, exactly.
I'm offended. What's wrong with the rest of my people? You know? Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, real talk. That just kind of triggered me from it. I was like, yeah, I remember that. And I remember thinking
Yeah,
like, thank you. And then being like, wait a minute. I shouldn't have said thank you.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's fast forward a little bit. So you had your baby boy, my baby boy. I love him so much. And now you and your husband are deciding, what trajectory of experiences you're going to have for your son. Like you said, you're still an avid reader. Education has always been at the foundation of your family through having, two immigrant parents who believed like this is definitely the direction. This is, economic mobility, all of that. Um, why did you choose a private school for your son?
Based on all of my experience, I felt that my child would be seen, would be known, and would have the largest access to help him be the best he could be.
Mhm. So was there ever any doubt, like, were you ever thinking of sending him to another type of school, or was it always like you're gonna send him to private school?
Um, it was always I was going to send him to private school. Now I am a partner, so
Mhm.
my husband grew up in Inglewood, never went to private school, but he did have this is he did have an experience that I think informed him because he had gone to school in Inglewood all the way up through his senior year. In the middle of his senior year, he was involuntarily moved with his mom, who got a job in Ramon, California, which is up north. Um, not many Black folks. And he got put in this class, and the school was all white. And he had that sort of similar experience and having access to all of these things. And going from a place that did not have options to a place that had all the options, I think kind of informed and opened his eyes to what that could do for someone.
So what I mean when you say is that, like, for you, because of your own experience being in a private school or boarding school, and then your husband's experience with seeing what it was like outside of a traditional public school setting, private school seemed like a better option because it gave you more options.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And then so let's talk about that. So what are some of the advantages that you feel like your son has provided being in a private school?
You will hear me say this repeatedly, and I don't know how else to express it other than being known and being seen. He is, I remember his first grade teacher, she wrote a report card, and it was like a love letter about my child. And she saw him, and it was it brought me to tears. I was like, "Okay, I made the right decision because she knew him." And I volunteered for lunch. And the lunch lady's like, "Oh, you're Wade's mom." She was like, "He doesn't want to eat his vegetables, but I keep putting them on the plate." So, I mean, like these are the
Little,
things.
like, personal things, yeah, so
Yes.
and is it a smaller class environment that he's in? Like, how big is his class size?
Um, 18,
That's actually pretty
18,
good for pretty large for a private school still,
but
right?
two teachers.
2
18
teachers,
with two
okay.
teachers. Yep.
So, you just immediately found like they saw your son. It feels like you were walking into an environment where you felt like he was loved. Which you said they literally wrote a love letter about your child. I mean, I could tell you that most families, most Black families, especially ones that don't have their kids in private schools, will say the exact opposite. They will say that their children, they don't feel like their children are safe. They don't feel like their children are seen. And so that's really powerful for you to name that. Within all of that, did you find any areas, especially with the experience of being the one, especially with the experience of knowing what it's like to be tokenized, were there any areas where you feel like you had to fill in the gaps for him?
I think that's constant. I think identity-wise and, um, confidence in being able to I feel like I have to fortify him in a way of the teachers see him, but still the students come from different households.
Mhm.
And maybe this it's I want to say in second grade, he's like, "Mommy, what's a private jet?"
Ooh.
And so, right. So
Mhm.
he like this, like these are things that his kids are his classmates are coming to school with different households. And
Right.
so he's coming to school with all these different new words that he has to figure out, and people are being
Mhm.
taught. And that's any school and any
Mhm.
environment, you're going to have that, but these are different types of things to navigate. And for him to say, okay, no, we're not going to fly private, and no, mommy and daddy don't have a Lamborghini that drops you off to school, and unfortunately, yes, the nanny is the one that drops these kids off, and no, you can't go over to their house because their parents are home. It's only the nanny. I
Mhm.
mean, like those are the conversations that I have to um make sure he has that self-worth and value and not have it tied to these things.
Mhm. Yeah. Wow. That's interesting. Wow.
And
Okay. And
as we
so
get into middle school, I think it's going to be harder and harder.
you think it's going to be harder as he gets older, even though he's
Yes,
with
I think
well,
so.
because it's more because he's with the same classmates, right? But then
So
it's
in sixth grade, the school brings in a significant amount of other students. So these kids have been together since kindergarten. And
Mhm.
then in middle school, the classes get a lot bigger. So there's going to be a bunch of new kids that are coming in, but these kids pretty solidly have been
Mhm.
together since kindergarten.
Okay. Yeah, and so it's interesting when you say fortify. Um, we had a conversation one time where you were talking about going to the school and meeting another Black parent. But you've also been really intentional about recruiting more
Yes.
parents. Can you talk to us about what that has been like for you as a parent at the private school, and how has that private school supported you and helped you do that?
I remember in our first interview at the school, so this was right before COVID hit. We had gone in for our interview and we immediately loved the school. Mind you, I had been driving by this school repeatedly, and I've been talking to other people in the community and finding people that had actually gone to the school and kind of getting my group of folks together of like, okay, what should I ask for? What should I be thinking about? And what was your experience? And so in that first meeting, the head of their diversity happened to be, and I don't know if this was a setup or not, but she happened to be walking out as we were walking out as well. And so we had a whole conversation in the parking lot,
Mhm.
and this was a Black woman. And I was just like, okay, give it to me real. Tell me what to expect. Tell me where the school is really going. Because in the admissions process, you're kind of wanting to put your best foot forward, and you do ask the hard questions, but I don't think you ask them in a way that is like, give me the real. So she was there. She was absolutely lovely. And she was just like, it's not where they want it to be, the diversity. And I was like, okay, but they
Mhm.
had a plan and they were putting things in motion. And
Mhm.
in that moment, I was just like, I'm gonna go on this ride with them.
Mhm.
I all even if they weren't, I knew that my child would be fine because I was fine. And
Mhm.
not to say that my prior school didn't have that mission. I wasn't there for it. I was
Well,
on the
did
front.
they have a head of diversity at your school when you were there?
Well, that's the thing. No, I was one.
Yeah.
And so by the time my sister, there was 3. So,
Mhm. I mean,
yeah,
you're saying a lot, and I wanna make sure that our listeners hear this, like, you are at a private school that is very intentional about diversifying its school, like, there is someone that's there that is a head of diversity, and I wanna name that because that is one of those things where we as parents have to look for, like,
yep,
okay, if I choose this model, like you said, all the different identities that my son is going to experience, the different socioeconomic classes that, are going to be different than him on top of the culture identity. But are there going to be people in that environment that see him, that are supportive of him, that are supportive of parents? And it sounds like from what I'm hearing, obviously you made a great choice because you got all that. And it's also one of those areas of privilege because you were able to include what you didn't get to which is what we all want to aspire to as parents, like whatever it is that we didn't have in our academic upbringing, or our academic attainment, we want to make sure that our children have better or more. So that
absolutely.
that's fantastic. And so, okay, so you meet the head of diversity, you guys talk, Wade gets into the school, little Wade, and now you are going in. How many, well, let me just ask you this. How many Black parents have you recruited to your school, Mona?
I will not take full responsibility for this, but um there's a whole like I joined Mocha Moms and there's like this whole Mocha Mom consortment of like moms that have come to the school. And I think everybody has kind of taken on that role of I want to bring more good families that look like us to this school to have this opportunity and to be in the classroom with my kid. And
Mhm,
I think we the first year a fellow mom and I started up an affinity group for Black parents, and it's called Families of African Ancestry at the school.
mhm,
And in that, we were intentional about if you were thinking about the school, we would be available for phone calls. If you were interviewing at the school, we were standing there saying, "Hey, do you have questions?" And
mhm,
so, being at the admissions events, being an organization that supported the families that were already there, and
mhm,
then looking for other, spreading the word for about the school because it's a
mhm,
little school that's tucked into the Calabasas Canyon, and
mhm,
so it is a if you know you know kind of school,
mhm,
but it's not like a huge school.
mhm,
And the parents did it. The parents saw how great their kids were doing there, and mind you, if the school wasn't doing great, they weren't going to go and recruit other people to come.
right.
And
Mhm,
so at this point, the admissions, it touts that it's 51% diverse,
mhm. Okay,
which is a big deal.
that
Not to
is
say that those are all Black families, but
mhm,
it's 51% from around the world. And
yeah.
so that is a big deal to them, and it is definitely a feather in their cap that they make known.
Mhm. No, I think that that's fantastic. And, I'm sure some listeners will be like, well, why is diversity so important? And, maybe they won't, maybe they will. But what would you say in the sense if someone asks you, why is it so important that your child have some level of diversity and that there are more people like him? What would you say to them?
Because that's the real world. That is the place in which you're going to walk amongst is there are a diverse amount of people, and it is important for you to be able to communicate, to relate, to value, to validate people that don't look like yourself.
Mhm. Okay. Well, I have got two more questions for you. The one question I have for you next is, so clearly you are in a class of your own in the sense of like being able to have this experience with your child. And there's obviously financial trade-offs that not everyone has, the access or the ability to do this. What have been some of the biggest trade-offs that you've had to compromise on? And if you were talking to someone who's listening that's saying, you know what, that's really great.
Mhm.
You know, I can't afford to send my child there, but I want them to have that experience. What other ways can people learn about private schools and get engaged in private schools, or are there? Mhm.
I think there are quite a few, and I am not as versed in this, but I know
Mhm.
that there is a lot of organizations, and I think here in California, there's something called the Alliance. And they pair families with different schools. So I think I went to an event, and I think the head of our school is the head of this group as well.
Mhm.
And they bring all these kids from all over California, and they pair them with the right school. So I think, and that offers scholarships, I think. And
Mhm.
I think there's several organizations, and the school itself
Mhm.
offers financial aid. They offer programs. And one thing that I would stress is that I think a lot of times Black families think that they have to offer some sort of athletic prowess to get into these types of schools. And I
Mhm.
think that does a disservice, because then there is a stereotype that if you are a Black family at these schools, then your kid must be really good in sports. And
Mhm.
that's not the case.
Okay. Even though your son is really good in sport.
There's that. I mean, from kindergarten, I mean, do we know?
I know, right? I'm just totally messing with you. I have to mess with you. I cannot mess with you, right? It's just like it's
I get that.
no, but no, that's real. That is a real talk. Like, majority of private school. I mean, my husband went to a private school.
Yep.
He's 6'8". He's pretty much been that height the majority of his life. And
Right.
it was very much, hey, this person, we want you to be on all the teams.
Yes.
And we often talk about his experience and how that shaped him being in a private school experience versus mine being in traditional school. So
Right.
all of this are those conversations that we have at home around our dinner table as
Yeah.
Black families as we discuss this.
There is a financial sacrifice. My
Mhm.
parents made it, and it was a priority.
Mhm.
We are making, I mean, the amount of money that we could have put in other places,
Yeah.
it is, you just decide what's important to you. We only
Mhm.
have one kid, and we decided that, yes, we're going to financially
Mhm.
put everything in him, because that's
That's what you
our
do.
responsibility. Yeah, that's our responsibility, and that's the commitment we made, and
Mhm.
we we wanted to do that for him.
Yeah. And praise God that you're able to do that, right? Because again,
Right.
like um
Absolutely.
this is the thing, the whole purpose of this segment, the whole purpose of our podcast is to show the variety of options that are available and to be able to specifically let Black families know that we are not monolithic. Obviously, you've shared a lot of your experience, which has just been incredible. I keep
Yeah.
telling you, you need to write a book. But
It's one day.
one day. Um, but it's just continuing to double down on the need to have options. I mean, at the top of the
Yeah.
hour, we talked about, there is a small percentage of Black families who are in private schools. However, there's starting to be a trend that we are seeing happen that if they're not going to a private school, there is a disenrollment happening at very large scales from traditional schools.
Mhm.
Um, and we're seeing an uptick in people choosing charter schools, choosing to keep their kids at home and
I've seen
homeschool
a
them.
lot. Mhm.
Yeah, and we've got this new trend of micro schools, which is a combination of kind of like a homeschool environment and a private school environment, and a public school environment to some degree. But all of it is encompassing around options and around
Yes.
access and around making sure that our children have a quality education. we've talked a lot about your experience. We talked about you. Sounds like your son goes to an incredible school. I'm just curious to know, are there what are some other reasons that you think are attributing to like your son having such a great private school experience?
I think the teachers have been, of course, the most important part because those are his everyday interactions. His, I think his kindergarten teacher was a Black woman. His third grade teacher was a Black woman. His fourth grade teacher was a male. And now his fifth grade teacher is a Black male. And it is his math teacher, and my son plays golf, the teacher plays golf, and it is something where he sees this strong male on a daily basis that holds him accountable and is kind of shaping, giving him the tidbits, and is his safe person as well. So I think that this is a big deal, and I hope that this relationship is fostered so that he is a mentor long term. And I think just him having access to having a Black male teacher in primary or lower school is almost unheard of, and it's a big deal. And of course, he's one of the most popular teachers at the school. So it's a big deal.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you say that because that's true that when you have a teacher of color, they're not only impactful for the students that they mirror, they're also impactful for other students that they don't mirror. It's just something about that experience.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that is probably the secret sauce there. So thanks so
Yeah,
much for sharing that, and what an
absolutely.
incredible experience for him because he's had more than one. I mean, we've got students who have never had one and have gone all the way up
Yeah,
into college without ever having a teacher of color, and definitely not one that mirrors their identity. So that's amazing. Well, I'm
yeah.
very excited and happy to hear that. Okay, so we're coming down to the end of the hour here, Mona, and one of the things that we ask most of our guests are there's a play on words. This is called choice words. If there were
Mhm.
any choice words that you had for your community, for families, for young boys, anything that you could think of, what would be some choice words or a choice word that you'd want to share for people to let them know about your experience, raising a young Black male in private school?
One, I think that the biggest is be there, be seen, be known. Um, I know sometimes people have had the experience where they were brushed aside and were not heard and just said, okay, I'm going to let my kid have this opportunity and I'm just going to send him to school and I'm going to pick up. I understand that unwillingness to fight or push and not wanting to jeopardize your child's academic standing, but I wholeheartedly, unequivocally feel that you should be in the school as much as possible. That you should build those relationships with the administration, build those relationships with the teachers, build those relationships with the lunch school person. These are the people that see what's going on with your kids, see your child, keep an eye out. I always give him a person that is his trusted person. If there is a situation in which you feel you're not being heard and your side of the story is not being given any sort of a credit to. You find that person and tell that person to call me. You find that person and you tell that person, I need to see my mom. And I just feel like there are tools that our kids need to have in these environments where there are situations where they're not going to be heard and they're not going to be validated, and I want him to always feel that he's safe, and I know that the school knows that I'm going to be there. And they
Amen.
all know me. And so that is my biggest thing is, and sometimes I do not want to discount the fact that I had that luxury, and for sure it was a luxury because I owned my own business and I am in control of my time. So my ability to volunteer, ability to be at the school is a luxury and it is a gift. So I understand that that is not the case for everybody, but at the same time, I think it's really important.
Yep. Well, I love that, Miss Mona, and I thank you so much for spending time with us today and sharing with us not only your experience as a mom, but your experience as a student as well. Blessings to your family and all of the choices that y'all have made to make sure that you've had a quality education. I appreciate you taking the time to sit with us and let our listeners know. Listen, Mona is in California. Smart Insurance Agency is her business. We'll make sure that we put that for people to know about. She literally is the light of my life, and somebody who truly is successful in all the things that she puts her hands to, and especially when it comes to family. So, Mona, I just welcome you and cherish you. And thank you so much for taking this time to be with us. For everyone listening, this is another episode of Choice Words where we discuss the different intersections of education and culture from Black and Latino families across this country. Freedom to Choose Schools, we set our sights on making sure that schools that are operating in communities of color are also led by communities of color. Why? Because we see their value. We have shown statistically that when you have an administrator that mirrors your identity, or a teacher that mirrors your identity, or someone who sees you, you exponentially grow academically. And that is something that is a value point that we don't ever want to miss or lose sight of. And so thank you for listening to another episode, and we will see you next time.